This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. We're coming at you late Friday night. It's May 10th after the Wolves' 27-point loss to Denver in Game 3. We're now 3 games into the series, and somehow the road team has won every game. Pretty tight one in Game 1. Wolves blow out the Nuggets in Game 2, and then another blowout. Tonight, I got Kyle Theige here for some immediate reactions, just kind of hit the top line items in this one. Kyle, what side of the ball do you want to start on? I mean, offensively and defensively, there were elements of this game that the Wolves did not deliver
in. Defensively, because that's what they've claimed is not claimed. It's what has been their calling card all season and their identity. And from the rip, it just wasn't there, right? Like the defense just wasn't there. The intensity wasn't there. We talk a lot about the D word in this playoff run, desperation. Just from the tip, like Denver just had it and Minnesota didn't. And we can talk about why. We can talk about excuses or reasons or what Denver just did to execute better on the offensive end for them. But just looked like a Minnesota Timberwolves team playing defense in like February 8th against the Blazers, right? Like for the first half, and you're like, and then they'll figure it out because the Blazers are bad. But the Nuggets aren't the Blazers. And once the rope got a little bit away from them, Jokic and Jamal Murray just took it and lit the rope on fire and made it a series.
Finch was asked about the defense after the game. I'll play that clip before we get into that side of the ball a little bit more.
Struggles maybe on offense translated and carried over. Yeah, I think some, for sure some of that. But to be honest, though, like we didn't start the game with the same real teeth and intensity defensively that we had been doing. A lot of separation. We were trailing on every play. I think they got their hand on almost every shot they missed for a while. Whether we rebounded or they rebounded, they still were in the mix too much. A couple ticky-tack fouls early. I don't know if that softened us up, but losing Jaden early certainly hurt our ability to guard him a little bit more, aggressively on the perimeter. I thought they were some unfortunate calls, but it is what it is.
So Kyle, I thought we talk about this all the time, right? When the Wolves defense is really there, you see that in the connection, or kind of the opposite of what Finch is talking about there. There isn't any of that separation. I do think foul trouble and just kind of the way this game was officiated played a role in that. But I also think what Denver did was they just got to their offense fast, right? Like it was fast in the offense and it was moving. And so when they got that half step ahead, they kept it kind of for the entirety of the possession. They kind of stayed in their offense, stayed moving. That kind of beget ball movement overall for them. But I thought that was the big thing, is they really attacked the Wolves' perimeter pressure with kind of speed and force. That one in the first quarter, I think it was, when Nikhil picked up Jamal Murray, and Jamal just kind of like got a step on him. It was that straight line drive all the way to the kind of right side of the rim. That was their counter to the hell that Alexander Walker and McDaniels seemed to put them in the perimeter. That really stood out to me right away at the beginning of the game. And, then when the Wolves didn't kind of have the energy to match that on the other side of the floor, that kind of got the snowball rolling downhill faster. Offense, them getting into it more, that stood out to me.
Yeah, I just thought too, we're doing this. It's 1:20 in the morning. Oh my God! But we're doing this right after, so I want to rewatch it in the morning. But it also felt like they got the ball over the half line, like just faster. So to your point, like they just made it emphasis of don't slowly inbound the ball and let them. By the way, I just love referring to teeth on defense. Just a random thing, but talking about good defense with teeth. They just didn't let them get into that. So it was a point of emphasis, especially when Jokic brought the ball up. I think their bigs, if I remember right, I think their bigs might have brought the ball up a little more too, just trying
Gordon, man, that was their adjustment with Gordon. You can't do the Rudy lurking thing, or the Rudy in the spiral thing loses its teeth when Aaron Gordon is. Really, you think about it like Kyle Anderson. What happened in the second half of the season with Kyle Anderson? They're like, okay, we're done just having you camp out in the corner. We're going to actually have you kind of be the point guard here. they have to guard the point guard. We knew Denver was going to get to that at some point. I think that was the first possession of the game. Gordon initiated, and then I think he had three made threes at halftime too. So that, in addition, to the officiating, in addition to the lack of connectiveness, I do think the speed in which Denver was getting into their actions and using Gordon in a way where he was less of a liability to them, that seemed to make a difference for their offense.
But isn't that why the playoffs are so sweet? Because like that was it. Like the defending champs were basically just like, hey, remember that sequence where Nikhil picked up Jamal 94 feet and it was awesome and viral and he was smiling? Like, why don't we just not have Jamal bring the ball up and save his energy? He's still got a bad calf, although tonight again he looked really, really good. Yeah. But yeah, just to have their bigs bring it up, to get into their stuff a little earlier, was really like a common sense adjustment kind of, but also one that was paid out in spades. So, and just because there's a couple buzzwords we've already said 5 minutes in, like officiating, and we should talk about that for a second in terms of what the Wolves said after and Finch. But also, too, there was kind of this theme, and I want to get into this later about coaching, that the Wolves did not execute their game plan very well. And it's Mike Conley brought it up post-game. I think Amp brought it up. I think Nikhil brought it up. So
game plan mistakes was
yeah, that was like the buzz phrase post-game too. So
you got the sense they're talking about defensively with that, right? I don't think any of them.
Yeah, 100%. Right? I think, and their offense coming into tonight was, I think they had the best offensive rating in the league or in the playoffs all the way through these first 6 games. But their offense still does kind of feed off their defense. And tonight, because their defense was but that's why I wanted to start with the defense, because the defense was so bad, and it was like a baby, right, with no teeth. And the fact that those things kind of snowballed. Then offensively, I mean, this is why Jordan McLaughlin got minutes tonight, is because he is like the epitome of move the ball, and the ball got sticky again. So they didn't play good defense. Then the offensive end, it was really slow. It was like what Denver did for the first games, really slow to get into their stuff, not passing the ball, not making an extra pass, and it kind of snowballed on them. So from a blame standpoint, top to bottom, right? I mean, if you look at a quick box score thing, I think the Nuggets starters had like 94 points, and the Wolves had 90. So they didn't do anything to slow down the Denver starting 5, which is probably still maybe the best starting 5 in the league. They are the champs for a reason. I don't take my panic meter didn't go off. It was just the team that needed to respond and punch back, as Ant said, did. The Nuggets punched back. The Wolves had no punch. And now you set up for an awesome, awesome Game 4 on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll talk about Ant here in a little bit. I do think the officiating element is an important one to talk about. And, last night, I had 3 or 4 beers at the event, and I was a little short and sharp related on to the officiating stuff. And my personal stance, or why I was saying that last night, is I don't like the implication of it being rigged, and I don't even know if that's what Britt was doing, but I responded in that sort of way. So I was like, why are we talking about the officiating so much? And now you look at this game, and that seems really wrong, because the officiating really played a role. I'm curious your perspective on that, but for me, where I thought the officiating gave the Wolves issues was that it was officiated in a different way than games 1 and games 2 were. Particularly game 2 was like a cage match, and the Wolves took advantage of that. They were intentional about being physical and pushed the limits on that. That was a game they were letting the Wolves be physical, and Jaden still got in foul trouble in game 2 there. In this one, it felt like they were chasing that the whole sort of night, and because Denver was playing a little bit faster, the Wolves weren't as attached. And now you're kind of thinking a little bit of how physical can I even be to get myself back into that. So does that mean the refs, did a bad job? You don't like that. You don't like when games are officiated so differently. So to that end, that's where I would personally say I had an issue with the officiating tonight, was just in how different it was than game 2 in particular. And then for me, my main marker is like, did it feel like the refs kind of let the game get out of control? One way or the other, and it did feel like that too. There's going to be more of the refs you suck and all that sort of energy going on in the in a playoff game. But the biggest thing to me was the Wolves seemed to not know how it was going to be officiated because it was so blatantly being officiated differently from the jump. That's what stood out to me about the calls in this one.
You get, rightfully so, but you get pretty feisty on this topic, so I'm willing for you to jump down my throat a little bit if you disagree. But to me, it's
no,
like,
I mean, clearly I'm in the minority here, so I
No.
don't want to be the guy who's like, no.
like I don't think the NBA is rigged, and I also don't think tonight. I mean, I thought tonight was pretty. What's a good Brit word? I don't know, but like it was different, right? It was like you said, it was a cage match on whatever night that was in game 2, and then tonight was more of like, I don't know, just like ballet dance. I mean, it was just, there were so many soft falls called in the first couple quarters, but the Wolves have dealt with that before. It was probably a little more egregious tonight, but I think back to game 3 in Phoenix when we were there. I thought that game was officiated a lot differently than game 2. And they kind of won that because Ant went supernova, and they just didn't have anyone on the team tonight. I mean, we'll talk about the offense. There wasn't one player tonight that I thought played well. Not one. And like normally it's
Cat in the first half, but yeah.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about it, but Cat took 7 shots. So like, it's one in the second half. So but the officiating was just really weird and different, and they've matured enough that they have started to be better about handling that like they did in Phoenix. But tonight it was just so, it didn't make sense. And I think you can start to see Nikhil.
I agree with that.
And Nikhil's a big one because, I mean, the reason Nikhil Alexander-Walker, and you know this, with all due respect to Mike Conley, is probably the coolest cucumber out there. I mean, he has fire to him, but he is he's the book club guy. He is very calm and introspective, and he gives great quotes. And he lost his mind because he was, as he said post-game in the locker room, like, he knows how to navigate those screens probably better than anyone. Like, I referred to him as JJ Redick, but on the defensive end. And there were these little things that Jokic would do where he would, like, at the last second kind of stick a hip out, or Jamal Murray or whoever Nikhil was guarding would kind of, like, run into him. And Nikhil just kept getting, like, just balled over. Like, his shoulder was just getting crushed. And he finally kind of lost his cool. So they weren't really calling. And the Wolves don't flop, right? Like, Jaden and Nikhil aren't guys that are going to flop running around screens. It's just not what they do. So I just, man, I don't really care. I never want to see who's the officiating crew before a game. I don't really think about it. Maybe I didn't need to now. But the Tony Brothers stuff, for whatever it is, he just called a different type of game tonight. The fouls were kind of even. But in the first half, I think the Wolves just got a weird whistle, and they didn't respond, and then it led to bad offense. But they did kind of lose their composure too. So they didn't lose because of the officiating.
But Nikhil was the good example of everything you're saying right there, and I like the way he answered that question. Sorry, I don't have that clip, but what he talked about being frustrated with in that play in the locker room after the game was, he said, I'm not someone that's going to flop.
Yep.
And where's the exact quote here? I feel like my initial routes are to avoid the screen, but every time I keep getting clipped trying to get around. And he'd hurt his shoulder a few possessions before that. He talked about that. But then he ended that quote with, I just got heated in the moment, getting hurt, trying to play hard, should have had a better conversation. But I think that's like a really good example of a specific thing with the officiating that was different. I mean, he's guarded Jamal Murray in the Denver offense a bunch of times before, and has a pretty good idea of how to navigate those things. For him to get frustrated with it, to me, is to say that it's being officiated differently, or Denver's doing something differently there. And I think part of it was Denver was trying to get to like that DHO stuff with Jokic all the time, kind of the screens that aren't really screens, but like what a dribble handoff is. There was a lot of that where Jokic was almost like get a bump and then kind of start rolling down into my roll there. If you slow them down, they probably look like a moving screen every single time. So I think that was just like one example of the Wolves were like, we're used to this being one way. It wasn't. Plus, I'm frustrated. Again, snowball rolling down the hill. Nikhil pops up and goes and directly at Tony Brothers there, and got caught in the moment. But I think it was different for him and thus frustrating for him.
Yeah. Also, I think the officiating was really bad tonight, but I mean, I'm not, and this is just me. This is how I look at it. But like, I think Michael Porter Jr. had 4 fouls early in the third, and like he had foul trouble. Aaron Gordon had 2 early. I think every player that played more than 10 minutes for the Nuggets, other than Jokic, had like 3. So it was a really bad whistle. I've never seen. I think there was 3 challenges overturned. That just kind of snowballs again, to use that word. It was just bad officiating. There was a moment where KCP was hot in the first half, and he kind of like confronted Tony Brothers, and Tony Brothers kind of like stepped to him. It was really Chris tweeted out, he's like, I think Tony Brothers wants to fight KCP, but then they kind of like let it boil down. But then Nikhil did that same thing in the second half, and he got teed and Kyle got teed. So it just, bigger picture, I think the whistle on game 2 was pretty far left. Yeah. And now the whistle tonight was maybe a little far right. I would imagine it'll kind of come more to the middle, and anything that's in that middle to any 85 percentile, like the Wolves are good with that. But whistles like tonight, they struggle with, because they do want to get into you. They do want to be physical. But again, I thought the Minnesota Timberwolves played like ass. Like offensively, they were bad. Mike Conley, if I have this right, Mike Conley led the team in rebounds. Not great.
What, is that real?
Yeah, Mike and Ant had 6 rebounds apiece. Carl had 5, Rudy had 4, and Jaden had 3. So, like, only one player took more than 10 or double-digit shots. They just weren't really well prepared. And that was, if you wanted yes, officiating was bad, and maybe segment 2, but I thought they got really out-coached. And we can talk about this after the break, but Chris Finch was, from my view on Section 110, Chris Finch was really mad at his coaches. Like, he was trying to get him to call timeouts, and, like, just they weren't really making adjustments play by play.
Interesting. You had a better angle on that than
and that was just my
perspective.
But Finch was really frustrated. There was one point where it was a time to take a timeout, and he was just like, "We got to take one." So all in all, the Wolves just did not. And it kind of makes sense, right? I woke up today at 9:30 and I turned my TV on, and Ant was on GMA. I think this team had a good week, have played their asses off for the first 6 playoff games, did what they're supposed to do in Phoenix, did what they're supposed to do in Denver, and it just, whether they were off the rhythm or whatever, but they kind of were feeling themselves. We're going to talk boxing all playoffs. They got punched in the mouth, and they had no counter punch, and now it's 2-1.
Yeah, just last thing related to officiating, just given what happened in game 2 and Malone and Murray and that team kind of losing their mind, and then the Wolves persistently frustrated with it. Like, it's just a reminder of the importance of emotional control in this series, right? Like, who's going to win that in the next 4 games? I think will probably be the team that wins the series.
And on that last thing, do you know who was the most calm? Ant. And that, to me, if you're trying to find a sliver of hope, like, there's a really cool, he's mic'd up again, and he was like, it's a series, fellas. Like, it's 1st to 4. That's what he said post game 2. I was actually fine, like, Kyle losing his cool, Nikhil losing his cool, Jaden getting frustrated, Carl even getting a little frustrated. This team goes as far as Ant will carry them. He's been promoted all week in all playoffs about his leadership at 22. He did not blame the officials. He blamed himself. He blamed their lack of energy. I think that's a good sign moving forward.
Yeah. We'll get to Ant after the break here. Let's grab our first break, though, to let people know that we will be at Dual Citizen Brewing Company in St. Paul tomorrow afternoon. Saturday, we're going to kind of do come get a spot, hang out, have a beer with us at 4 p.m. And then we are going, Britt, Kyle, and myself, we'll do the live show at Dual Citizen. That'll be at 5 p.m. It was really fun on Thursday when we did this at Falling Knife. We've never done one before in St. Paul or at Dual Citizen. I think it's going to be a really big, cool outdoor, setup, and warm. What's supposed to be like 70s tomorrow afternoon. It'll be fun and be a good way to kind of reset the vibe. So I'm looking forward to that. Kyle, what about you?
When we booked this, I was like, oh God, like, what if they were like down 0-3 to the champs? And now we gotta do this podcast. The Minnesota Timberwolves are up 2-1. They have home court. They probably played their worst game that we've seen in a month. So yeah, I like how you put that. We're gonna reset the vibes tomorrow. We haven't had enough beer yet, so we're gonna recharge and kind of get everyone talking. We'll have mics again. We want to ask or answer a lot of questions that people have about adjustments. We can talk real basketball stuff now, but
Yeah, we'll both rewatch the game in the morning and kind of have
but come to Dual Citizen. It's going to be fantastic. I don't know if I've even been to St. Paul in a long time. There's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be outdoors. It's going to be beautiful. I have no idea if we'll have special guests. Brett will be there. It'll be awesome. But we're going to talk about the Wolves being up 2-1 with a game on Sunday at home. And again, the vibes are still relatively high. This team is in a good spot, and let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and my 2 Prize Picks suggestions did not go well tonight. I had Rudy Gobert to score more than 12.5 points. He's only scored 12 points all series, I think. 6 in game 1, 6 tonight. Also, Nickeil Alexander-Walker to have more than 6.5 points. He finished with 6 as well there. I think I was looking at a more favorable game script for my predictions there. But I think we are at the point where you're getting a feel for this series and can kind of do your best guesswork to kind of put together how you think this thing is going to go. So before Sunday, take a look at the Prize Pick slate to put together your daily fantasy lineup for that game. And you can do that at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. And if you'd like a $100 sign-up bonus, use the promo code Dane. All right, Kyle, I do want to talk about the offense, and maybe a way to just kind of start talking about the offense is to focus on Ant. And I thought it was interesting how he started his post-game media availability, talking about the energy he didn't have. I'll play that here.
Tonight. I mean, that's weird not to see a free throw.
Yeah, it's all good. I wasn't aggressive. I blame myself, but we'll be ready Sunday.
And why weren't you as aggressive?
I don't know, man. It's on me. I'll take the blame for this loss. I came out with no energy at all. I came out flat, and I can't afford to do that for my team. I let my team and my coaches down, fans down. I'll be ready for Sunday.
So I don't know. I have like a PTSD over Ant saying I need to be more aggressive. Just kind of given that. Remember, we've talked about this at length around Christmas, how teams really started loading up on Ant, trying to take away his aggression. And what happened after Christmas, kind of for all of January, is he really forced it, right? Mm-hmm. And his answer was more of me equals better, which with Anthony Edwards is almost always the case, except when it isn't, right? And we've learned, particularly in the Phoenix series, of the value of maintaining that aggression, but like at the effective volume, right? Mm-hmm. Not it will be bad if Ant takes that need for aggression and goes too far with it, in game 4, and that's how the turnovers come up, the more inefficient shooting things. Yet at the same time, you do need some more aggressiveness. Like, I do want to see Ant more aggressive there, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just that balance with him that is a fine line to strike. And when things are going well, right, where Ant's a very affirmative person, like this worked, I'm going to do it again. If this didn't work, am I going to trust in the plan and stick with that and go forward? I'm interested to see how he reacts to that. The energy, I think, was just about coming out that overall just they didn't start with the same fire that they did games 1 and 2 and get that first punch. But yeah, when Ant says that, what were you feeling in the locker room afterwards?
How do you not? Well, what he said, but like, how do you not believe his message? Like, how do you not kind of just come away from that? In the locker room post game, everyone kind of files out quickly. Losses, you're not really looking to hang around, but he was pretty calm and he was pretty collected, and I think it is real leadership to be like, I was bad because I had in my notes, like, I think Ant is playing bad and he had as many turnovers as he did assists. But again, this is really not a basketball take, but I also believe in it that, there was just too much really good stuff said about this team for a week. And if you're looking for a reason why a team would come out flat and their leader would come out flat, again, I'm not making fun of or criticizing the fact that he was on Good Morning America today, something that was taped yesterday, but just a whole week of like, okay, they're the only undefeated. I mean, pregame, the questions were like, you're the only undefeated team left in the postseason. Like, just a lot of really positive stuff. You know, he hits his half quarter pregame like he's dancing. I just think this team probably really truly, maybe that's why they're so frustrated postgame or even during the game, is probably just decelerated a little bit and just took their foot off the gas a little bit. And had an
kind of
opportunity.
while Murray did the opposite.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was like,
yeah.
I don't know, you ever come into a weekend, you got a to-do list, and like, if you just do some on Saturday, it makes Sunday easier. They just didn't do any of their to-do list on Saturday, and now they got to do it all on Sunday, literally on Sunday when they have game 4. But I don't know, man, like, when good things happen to this team, we kind of do small sample size or whatever. This team is just probably deserves, after 89 basketball games this year, this specific roster, to believe what their best player says. And Mike said it post game too, like he was almost salivating at what Ant will probably respond in game 4. Mm-hmm. But it's not the greatest answer, and it's kind of an excuse, but I think that whole team just probably took their foot off the gas a little bit. And maybe against Phoenix, that's fine. And then Ant can just go supernova, or Carl can get those bursts of points, and you can win another game and steal another game.
But they got real Denver tonight.
But you got real Denver. I mean, Ryan Blackburn does a really good job of covering. He said, this was the first game all postseason that the defending champs looked like the defending champs. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's because their back was, this isn't a hot take, right? Like if the Nuggets would have lost tonight, it was over. I don't even care that they're the defending champs, because mathematically just no team has ever come back from down 0-3. So you take a team that has taken their foot off the gas, you mix in the ingredient of a weird whistle or a different whistle, and then the defending champs being like, hey, we're not going to go down like this, and have a whole summer where, we got swept after winning a title. So all those 3 ingredients come together. But on the offensive end, it does start with Ant, and, he hit a 3 early, but the Nuggets still have no rim protection. Like, Jokic has no desire to protect the rim. And what did the Wolves do to respond to that? They took a ton of threes, and they did not go to the rim. So, and that's part of, I think the offensive or the game plan stuff that they criticized, like, we didn't stick to the strategy, was still more defensively, but offensively too. Like, again, that's why Jordan McLaughlin played, because it got really sticky, and at least he moves the ball or forces teammates to do things.
Yeah,
so,
he's like the break glass in case of no energy guy. Yeah. Like that, if he's
like
checking
Red
in.
Bull.
Yeah.
Like, okay, at least people are gonna start moving and stuff. And I thought Nas was bad, Nikhil was, everyone was bad, but Ant was, not his typical self. The worst game he's played in the playoffs, and for whatever reason, he just has these moments where he doesn't have it. But in my mind and your memory, he usually does follow up a dud with a stud type of performance. But tonight he
the whole
wasn't
team
there.
does.
Yeah.
It's and I think we'll probably get this in game 4, where there will be another stretch like that from Denver, right? Where they look like the defending champs, like Ryan said. What do the Wolves do at that time? Like, what if they do punch back there? Like that's what you needed to see, because it just looked like Denver early and often. I mean, they weren't really running through Jokic as much early on. I think that was part of their intention too, of like, okay, actually not every single thing is going to go through Jokic here. They got to Murray a lot, who had that zip. They got out in transition. I think a lot of the 3, it felt like every time Jokic missed a bucket, they got the offensive rebound, and he either went on to score or somebody else did. Like, as they, offensive rebound leads to threes often. It was just like a lot of that stuff that was energy related that the Wolves didn't have, even though they had the atmosphere, for it. But Denver came out with the more like precise and consistent energy, and I thought that was the difference. And the Wolves obviously did that in games 1 and 2 when they were in Denver. I would imagine that's a difficult thing to do on the road, but thus far, the team that has had the more energy, been more desperate, has won. And it's going to be that type of series, given the physicality of the play. It's just going to be that way.
They were down 15 at half, but I was sitting next to Jack, and I was like, they could easily be down 25.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's-
Carl was 4 for 4 from 3. That's why I was like, at least 25.
But when you and I covered all those Phoenix games together, that was also kind of a recurring theme, right? Where it's, oh man, they had a weird half, and they're only down 3 to the Suns, or it's like they played bad for a quarter, and it kind of caught up to them again, because you can have those, hey, life is sweet, like low energy, let's just cruise through it, we'll figure it out, we'll have a big third, crowd will go crazy. Games against teams like the Lakers or the Suns or these other teams that just aren't built with the experience or what this Denver Nuggets team has, and this Denver Nuggets team is still very special. And tonight, I mean, because they had runs, right? Like they had these moments where like, okay, now it's, the biggest lead or the biggest deficit the Wolves have faced in the first 6 playoff games was 8 points. It was 20 in the second quarter.
Right.
But they did chip away. But every time they kind of tried to get to that level, the Nuggets just kind of stomped them out. So it's a weird, perfect storm of taking your foot off the gas a little bit, but also the defending champs doing what they do best. But I didn't leave. I don't know. I would have been way more concerned. You asked me what I thought about Ant's comments. If he was like frustrated or if he was concerned, he took it all on himself. Whether that's right, I don't think it was all on him, but he has always bounced back in those spots, and that's what makes him the guy that was talked about all week as the next coming of the league. So
I got another Ant clip here where he kind of gets into that.
It's not my first loss. I've been sent home twice. Be all right.
This postseason, the first loss of the season for you guys. What do you look forward to the response to see from the teammates?
I'm looking for. I like the fact that they punched tonight. We didn't punch back, and that's the thing about that. That's fun. Like you love to compete, so it should be very competitive Sunday. And we're going to be here for it.
Do you try to just maintain kind of a positive attitude going forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to be negative. They won one game. We're going to try to win the next game. This is the first of 4 games. It's not the first of 1. So if it was the first of 1, we'd already won a series. So shit, we'll be all right.
We talk a lot about how he's a killer, right? He wants to kill you, and that's what makes him special. Smiling through those quotes and really believing what he said is kind of also like a serial killer in a really good way. I mean, Nikhil was frustrated, Kyle was frustrated, Carl was pretty cool post game, but Ant had a big smile on his face. And if you are a fan, you don't like when your players are smiling after losses, but I took that he knows he probably didn't do what he was supposed to do, and that's a trickle down effect. Again, snowball drink, and that he's gonna. Michael Hagan texted me, that Ant 40 ball on Sunday is gonna be special, and that's just kind of what he does. So. But yeah, he was bad tonight. I thought everyone else was bad, and they had something I wrote down, they didn't have 3 possessions offensively in a row that you'd be proud or that you'd want to pick and look at clips of. Mm-hmm. So whether that's because of the defense at the beginning of the game or just the lack of energy or whatever it was or the coaching, just didn't have it, and he didn't have it, and he couldn't go supernova, and it led to just a blowout loss at home.
Here's Finch on the offense.
Chris, offensively, it seemed like just not nearly as much movement to create any mismatches or anything like that. What caused that?
I mean, excuse me. Just sluggish, slow, pace up and down the floor wasn't where we needed it to be, where it has been all postseason. Decision making wasn't there. Just general movement, activity wasn't there. That's. I thought then we, tried to shoot our way after one pass, like when the game was still there for us to be had. We didn't want to work very hard for our offense, and got a little bit lazy and we missed those shots. We did miss a lot of layups early. Generally when you're doing that, it's you're not playing in the right mindset. So not a lot of good things on either end of the floor, really.
Yeah, Kyle, the offense was just ratty, right? Like in that first quarter where even when they got to what they were trying to get to, a bunch of missed bunnies, right? Like early on, and then also Cat was 4 for 4 from deep at halftime, but everyone else combined was 2 for 16. And the combination of not making those bunnies and not being able to, even hit 5 of your 16 threes, as this was maybe wasn't a high volume 3-point shooting team, but it was a high 3-point percentage team. The 2 for 16, right? Like they get bad threes necessarily, or bad rim attacks there in the first half. It's like they're missing the ones at the rim, and they weren't hitting open threes there. Did you maybe want some of the threes to come from other players, or have some of the rim attacks come from the players who are better at that? Maybe, but still, it was like Nas missed a couple point blank ones. Jaden was missing open corner threes. They were leaving him more open. They were leaving the less threatening shooters more open, and that just all kind of felt. I put in my notes, the first thing I wrote about the offense was the offense came out ratty, and it was just it wasn't what it looked like in the first two games. A little credit to Denver there, but I thought their defense was more attached, but this Wolves offense is not going to be able to keep up with Denver's offense if that's kind of the energy they have of not executing, finishing those offensive possessions.
No, that was one of the things I had in my notes too. As we're kind of nitpicking this, I want to just again say, like I did after game 2, that the series wasn't over. I thought Denver played awesome tonight, and they looked like the champs, and they were coached well on both sides. But the Wolves just missed a lot of good shots. I don't know if you can like pull up the stats or whatever, but if you look at like their shot chart, just a lot of open circles within like 6 to 8 feet, just little floaters, little Nas Reed back downs, or little touch shots that they just didn't make.
They were 1 for 9 from the short mid range, which is 4 to 14 feet.
And it felt like it, right?
Yeah, right.
So, and again, it was frustrating too, because in the early part of the game, they did just start, and that was probably it. Like, I probably should have been 5 minutes into the game, the Wolves had taken 7 threes. That was probably a sign that's like, hey, this is probably just, because that to me is like a sign of low energy. They're not getting to the rim. They're just kind of coming down, letting it rip. So when they did get into the paint, again, there's no rim protection whatsoever. Jokic is just, does not interest him in this series. But they just couldn't finish. But in that, 4 to 14 feet, they didn't get to the rim much. And then that all snowballs again, the theme of this pod, because Anthony Edwards didn't take a free throw in the 37 minutes he played. So, and the Wolves did end up, by the way, taking 25 free throws still, but he didn't take any of them. And that's the top of the snake, or the head of the snake, is that if he's not getting to the rim, he's not getting to the line, and you're not making your bunnies, and then Jaden is missing threes, and Jordan McLaughlin's missing threes, and everyone outside of Carl. I mean, Carl and Ant were 7 for 12, and the rest of the team was like 3 for 20. They just didn't have it going from anywhere. And that's almost why I feel pretty calm about it, not because it's 2-1 or you have the home court. When we walked home, there wasn't one player who played well. And to me, that's like, okay, that might just be an outlier. I know you don't want to say that because you did have the champs on the ropes, but I cannot think of a time, maybe that game 82 against the Suns, where every single person that's employed by this organization was bad. And to me, it's like, okay, that's usually a sign that one, just throw out the film, regroup on Saturday, and come ready for war on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's weird that what simultaneously happened was Ant didn't shoot any free throws, yet when Ant did get to the rim, it looked like the easiest thing ever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, that's
so there. So what that says to me is what I think we know to be a truth of this series is there's a lack of rim protection. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the reason one thing that has really fueled Cat in this series is they haven't really played a rim protector yet. Mm-hmm. Drew Eubanks in the Suns series. Right. They're just like Nurkic and Jokic aren't that, and it's a real opportunity for the Wolves offense to get downhill. But there's two different ways to get downhill. There's the way that Ant and Cat do it sometimes, which is like playing mousetrap. You're just going through a group of guys getting in the way there. Or when Ant catches it on the second side, it's swing, attack. That is such a different look. And that's when the Wolves offense is like lethal. And Ant and Cat are playing off the catch with that quick first step, because they are, particularly Ant, but Cat too, unless it's Aaron Gordon on him, he can get guys with his first step and attacking downhill too. So there's room for the Wolves to punish at the rim and to get downhill in this. It's not against the set defense, right? It's not when we always say with Ant, right? If if you need to beat your guy and you need to beat the gap help and you need to beat someone at the rim, even if it's not a rim protector, that's probably too much to go to over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But on the second side, it's never going to be all three of those layers, And so what do you do to get yourself in movement so as to have your attacks quick? And they, much like the reason I think Denver played significantly better offense is it was quicker, more decisive right away. That's the way the Wolves have to play offense when Denver is playing better, more attached defense. And just from a personnel standpoint, I think the Wolves have a leg up in this series to be able to do that, but you got to execute it, and that, and that's a day of practice. What do we got to do to get to those things? I think I would be surprised if we have another offensive performance that's anything like this, because the way Denver kind of strangled the Wolves offense feels less repeatable, given that their personnel defensively is not on the level that the Wolves is. You know what I'm saying? When the Wolves kind of strangle there, so there's room for this offense. It's just, can you play smart? Can again, we'll talk about Dan all the time. Can we think basketball rather than just hoop? Because when he's doing that, it just this offense becomes significantly more lethal because their weapons need to beat one guy. That's what they need to do.
Who do you think offensively tonight you would say had the best game for the Wolves?
Yeah, I mean, Cat just
because it's Cat
comes
right?
to mind. Yeah, because he had those 4 for 4.
Yeah. I liked. I mean, he was at 4 for 5 from 3, but they were just really. I mean, most of them, like I said, 6 of his 7 shots. Which again, this goes back to the coaching, right? Like, how did he have 7 shots? I know everything was disgruntled or broken or sludgy or all that stuff, but for him to have 1 shot in the second half, I mean, they didn't really pull the horses back and wave the white flag until midway through the fourth. So, but I love the shots Carl got in that first quarter. I mean, that was you talked to Finch pregame about kind of these bursts of points. They needed those bursts of points to keep them. I mean, I said they should have been down 25 at half. They would have been down 25 at half if Carl wouldn't have hit some big threes, some long threes. But yeah, I mean, outside of Carl, it's just you and I were talking. Maybe you thought maybe Rudy would have a big game offensively coming into this. And he was.
I just think that's there too, though. Like,
yeah, but that was the worst Rudy Gobert game that he's played, and not to be hyperbolic, but like, I don't know, 2024. I mean, he was just non-existent on the boards, non-existent on defense, non-existent on offense.
I asked him about his energy after the game, and he kind of took it in a different direction than that question. But Ant was on Good Morning America. Yeah. He had a baby this week too. Yeah. So there's, and that's the thing I think, you can bank on with Rudy is a professionalism, a showing upness. I mean, he does that 99% of games. That's Rudy's superpower, right? Mm-hmm. Is his consistency. And that did not look like the consistent version of Rudy. And I don't know. I would put a lot of that on the week he's had too, but I'm telling you, man, I think there's space for him on the roll if they can get to pick and roll here.
That really nice play. Yep. That was
dude. Just clear the corner too, man. And if you get Rudy there, we know this to be true too. If you get Rudy a couple of those offensive involvement, right, in a pick and roll, and I'm not saying it needs to be post ups or anything, but if you get Rudy a pick and roll dunk or two, you get better defense. That's just a fact. That's what it always is. So I'm still looking for that, man. I still think there's like a, I don't know, 19 and 14, 15 game for him, whatever, in this series. I see space for that on the floor. I think the Wolves, though, they trust Rudy more, but when it's early in the game and maybe you start kind of thinking about, is he going to catch this one on the roll and do it? I would push to trust that even more, because if you get an engaged Rudy on offense, I think that's going to open up things for you, and just that they'll start sending 2 bodies to him. And then on the other side of the floor, you're going to get a better Gobert defensively. So I don't know. I basically have been saying that all week. That's kind of been a takeaway I have, is there's more room for Rudy here, but that hasn't come to fruition yet.
And we started with the defense, and then I broke the internet, and then we got into the offense. But they didn't really make Jokic work at all on defense, and that goes back to, like you said, like they didn't really go to the rim, and when Ant did, it looked so easy because it is easy. Like if they can get to the rim, there is no resistance. But that's how, I mean, Jokic was a plus 30 tonight, but 24, 14, and 9, 3 steals, 3 blocks. To your point, I mean, it's not, when I say make Jokic work, I'm not thinking dump it into Rudy in the post, but there were just so many different ways, but Rudy is one of them that they just, Nikola Jokic got to do whatever he wanted tonight, and it was one of those classic Jokic is doing everything, dictating the pace of the game and everything and how fast the ball gets inbounded. So I'm with you. I think they got to find a little more ways to get Rudy involved because that little two-man action on that one side, that was as crisp as Ant has ever run it with Rudy, and that was as wide open of a dunk as Rudy's had, other than taking the ball in transition against Phoenix.
Well, it's one of those repeatable actions too. And if there's, again, if they're on, say they're on the right side of the floor and there's nobody in the right corner, right? And that two-man game, Jokic has to decide, am I coming up on Ant to take away the mid-range, or am I going to go back to Rudy?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when presented with, that's a good position to be in if you're the Wolves, because even if Jokic starts dropping in that to take away the rolls to Rudy, okay, then those are the times where you want Ant to like the 1-2 dribble into the mid-range, right? And that's a clean, consistent one. I think, honestly, the way the Wolves played offense reminded me a lot of how Denver played offense in the first 2 games, where it's like, hey, that thing worked, like,
yeah.
Like that is rewatching the Denver games. There would be, watching Denver's offense from games 1 and 2. I'd be like, that thing kind of worked. Didn't go back to it at all. The rest of the game, the Wolves had some of that energy too.
There was a lot of like 3-4 possessions like where Ant didn't touch the ball too. I mean, really, now that this isn't the most analytical podcast, it's just right after, but you're starting to therapeutically talk about it, and like, you know what, like you said, they found something that worked. They didn't go back to it.
Right.
They didn't play defense. They didn't call timeouts to stop runs. Nothing. And then the officiating was weird, and you couldn't exactly pin the tail on the donkey. And it's like, okay, yep, you lost by 25, or 27. But you do, again, as you kind of regroup on Saturday, and every single person in the tri-state area comes a dual citizen. You got to think about, okay, what can you hang your hat on? What did they do to make Jamal Murray, by the way, who, I don't know, maybe shouldn't have played tonight, but did and was awesome. How do you get back to kind of making his life a little more complicated? And then for Jokic, how do you make him work on both ends? Because he got to just paint on offense and just nap on defense for the most part. And that is like the way to defeat that superhuman, is to make him work on both ends, and they didn't do it tonight.
Let's wrap it up just talking about the environment a little bit at Target Center. Obviously not the result at all, not the performance that kind of kept it going, but it was it was still cool, to be there, to see what the environment was, and just a fan base that was that was ready for it. As they were kind of coming out for tip, like the Jumbotron caught like Carl's face. Did you see that?
Yeah,
kind of like
cool.
He was kind of like looking up in the crowd, and he had a little nod for it. That was, again, not the result at all, but I think this team has an advantage playing at home. It was cool to see the fire that was there. I don't know, the Wolves themselves need to pour gas on that, and then the fans will kind of come with them. But yeah, second round playoff series at Target Center in 20 years, at least at the jump ball, it was hot in there. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, those are one of those classic games. I saw like some, I don't know, Denver people or whatever being like, oh, it's not very loud in here, but that was a game that the Nuggets just stole from the Wolves from the tip, and really everything leading up to it. Also, beautiful day in downtown Minneapolis, being outside, walking to the arena, and every bar was just packed. Like, it was an awesome, the fans did their part. Like, it was an awesome day leading up to it. Last night was at Falling Knife was incredible. The Wolves just didn't bring any energy, and it kind of neutered how much fun that could have been.
Sure.
And then there was, half the team got trophies, and there's just a lot of stuff going on pregame that kind of delayed tip. It was, late tips are fun, but they also do, that thing tipped off like 8:47 p.m. So I expect a really good crowd on Sunday. I expect this fan base that is, myself included, like we've kind of graduated now. We've matured to every time Finch barks at a reporter or Ant is like, hey, we don't care what happened in the past. And we're like, oh, that's awesome. We love that. I don't care what Wolves collapses have happened in the past because, again, when they're good, we're like, that's awesome. They're a different team, right? I went viral because I was like, they're different. This team is different. I expect them to rebound, and I expect it to be really loud on Sunday because, again, if you could just kind of wipe away everything you knew when you woke up from a coma this morning, you're like, hey, or I guess tonight, hey, the Wolves are up 2-1 on the defending champs, and Game 4 is at Target Center. You would take that in a heartbeat. Now, how did we get here? I don't know. The classic cliche of a series doesn't start till the home team loses. Well, the series doesn't start till the home team wins, I guess. So this thing hasn't really kicked off yet. But no, I thought the fans were electric. It's, again, I think it's just a nice regroup. The cool thing that I liked post-game, this isn't really about the atmosphere, but Carl has been a really good quote, especially in this playoff run. And Mike echoed it too, but this team had really never faced this team in this playoff run. Not the organization, but this team in this playoff run had never really faced true adversity. And they did get kind of punched tonight. I think it humbled them a little bit. And I'm excited to see, I know the fans will be crazy and liquored up on Sunday, but I'm excited to see how this team responds. Because this is really the first time that Phoenix didn't really throw a punch. They tried in Game 4, but this was a real punch from a heavyweight, a 310-pound Serbian grizzly bear. And now let's see how this team that has never lost 3 games in a row, never had really a bad full week of basketball, how they respond, knowing that the odds are still tilted in their favor.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Like we're gonna get a series. You know, like this is gonna be, I think, in the answer you're just referring to from Carl there, he was like, I think he said at the end of it, he's like, now it's time to play chess. You know, they made their adjustment, you know, and that they need to do that as well, whether that be, you know, X's and O's or mentality. But that's what you get to. You get to Game 4, and it's you know the things that you're going to try to be getting to, and that they're going to be trying to get to, and what are your counters for that? Or if you're the Wolves, what are your answers to, again, more possessions, raise the volume of possessions that you're getting to what you want offensively, and the possessions with which you are being bothersome, staying connected, the teeth of the defense there. The hit rate of that was just really low tonight, right? And I would not anticipate that to stay the same, though I would anticipate Denver to themselves bring a similar version to Game 4, because they needed to come to Minnesota to be desperate for 2 games, and they were for sure desperate tonight. The more desperate team, the more energy team. But I think that's, you know, if you are the Wolves players, coaching staff, or even the fan base, like they in ways are still reeling too from their like, okay, it is only 2-1. We do, like, if you're Denver, you're thinking we do need to be 2-2 when we go back to Denver. So huge opportunity on Sunday. I'm excited about it. We'll keep this thing rolling. We'll do the vibe reset at Dual Citizen tomorrow. I think it'll be fun. We'll chop it up a little bit more, get Britt's thoughts on it. Yeah, we got a series, Kyle.
Close with this. Just, I'm naturally optimistic, but do you put, because I don't, but do you put any stock into like how they lost? Like, does it bother you more that it was,
I don't know,
like that it was a 27-point blowout? Because to me, I'm disappointed that they, again, had the champs on the ropes and didn't kind of knock them out tonight. But I really, and it sounds so lame, but I just kind of thought we just went through an hour now of coaching bad, defense bad, offense bad, star players bad, fans good. Just not their night. And that sucks, and it's really lame to say, but that happens in this league more than I think any other sports league. Nuggets, it was just their night, and they're more desperate. So I was just curious if you thought that, like, if they lost by 17 or 12, if you would have been like, oh, you know, I feel better, because I don't really care how they lost. It's just that they lost, and now you got to rebound on Sunday.
I think the question with any, you know, blowout is always, did something happen? Did the other team do something that instigated that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it you? And a piece of this team's identity is kind of they got some volatility to them,
Yeah,
right? If they like when they don't play well, they don't play well, and so
When
it's
bad,
like
it's terrible.
like I could see a world where the Wolves win this series and lose another game in this series by 20. You know what I'm saying? Like I could kind of see. So I don't know how that answers your question, or if that answers your question. I would have liked to see a more competitive version of the team. I would have liked to see in the third quarter, rather than letting it swell from 18 to 22, could have got that down to 14 and made it a little bit more competitive of a fourth quarter. That would have served some value. But, at the end of the day, you were back by a lot to a really good offensive team, a really good overall team. And they're not going to be able to do that. Like, they're probably not. If they fall back by 16, 18 to Denver is surgical. And it's, I don't know. Like you start telling yourself like some story, it's like halftime. You're like, okay, they're down a lot. Like, what insane thing is going to need to happen in the second? Like, is Ant going to have 30 in the second half like he did in game 4 against Phoenix? Is Cat going to need to hit like 5 threes? Like, you don't want to set yourself up in one of those positions to need that. So I'm looking at the first quarter in game 1. Like, can it be like games 1 and game 2 where it's close? You're doing your things, they're doing their things. This is not a team to fall behind to. I think they fall behind by double digits. It's gonna be tough to come back. But
that's the Carl pointed that out post game, but that might be the stat to look into for Sunday night. Is in those first 2 games the Wolves won that first quarter, and it really.
I think he was actually wrong, but I think they lost the first quarter of game 1 because remember it was like 18-4, 21-5. Yeah, it was close though.
But tonight it was 28-20 at the end of 1, but it felt again to my point like that it was 35-20. So
it did.
Those first 12 minutes, chess, checkers, trash can ball, whatever, boxing, they need to set the tone, and they just did not do that tonight. And that's what I'd be looking for again. Again, the fans were as loud as they could be right into the tip, but on Sunday it's like, okay, this team needs to set the tone. 2 other things, and let's end it, but I think we got to at least acknowledge that, Jamal Murray was good. There's 1, done. And then 2, Nikhil was really nice post-game and introspective and kind of felt bad about getting that technical and stuff, but something to keep an eye on is that he couldn't take his jersey off over his head.
Yeah.
And
you got a
shoulder,
stinger,
man,
it looked like.
He definitely got a stinger, so hopefully he wakes up tomorrow and it's kind of recuperated a little bit, but they need him. He's a big integral part of what they do, and so interesting Saturday leading up to what should be the game of the year, right? I mean, I saw someone say that whoever wins on Sunday wins the title. That's probably a little crazy too, but Sunday, the defending champs against the team that was probably coronated a little too early this week, it's going to be a big one.
It will be. We'll be talking about it more on Saturday at Dual Citizen Brewing in St. Paul. I'm looking forward to watching it back in the morning, digging in a little bit more. I'm sure we missed some things. Just looking at my notes, but Kyle Anderson, didn't talk about him. He didn't play well. If Nikhil and Jade, if Nikhil's not playing well, Jaden's not playing well. Like, that's the other guy, to go to. This team can't really afford to have 1 or 2 players have foul trouble and or bad games, but that wasn't the case in games 1 and 2. So can they kind of get things back on track? We will see. We'll talk about it more tomorrow at Dual Citizen. And if you can't come, that should be up. I don't know, maybe either late on Saturday night or Sunday morning.
It's gonna be awesome.
It is. It'll be really fun. Kyle will be there. Britt will be there. Looking forward to it. Until tomorrow with Kyle and Britt. He's Kyle. I'm Dane. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.